money was gone. And so I sort of looked at him and I was like, these clients are just going to get completely hosed here. Like, this is bad. And so we took it upon ourselves to finish the movies, him and I, and we basically finished them all over town while we were building out the studio that I'm sitting in now. And that was 17 years ago.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Hollywood Unveiled, where we pull back the curtain on the Hollywood entertainment industry and get to know the people behind the magic. I'm Jake.
And I'm Logan.
And Logan, our guest today, with over 300 credits on his IMDb, our guest started working in music videos in the mid-90s right after college. It was when he made his first feature, God Money, when he learned about post-production, which kicked off a long career in the field. In 2008, he founded the studio Anarchy Post, where he continues to help independent filmmakers bring their stories to fruition. Logan, our guest today...
What's his name?
I was getting to it. Our guest today is Dan Snow of Anarchy Post.
Yes. You know, he does anarchy. I had to throw some anarchy at you. You know,
okay. Yeah, there. And contrary to his company's name, production is never anarchy when you're working on it with him.
Oh God, Jake, that was the most terrible ad read I've ever heard.
I really reached on that. I know.
No, it's a very fun interview and a very well formatted company from the sound of it, despite the name being Anarchy.
Yeah. No, this was a blast. I love catching up with him, and he's always been a great guy to work with when in the post-production process. So I'm really excited to share his story, Logan.
Well, let's jump into it.
All right. This is Dan Snow of Anarchy Post. So Dan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good.
Great. I know our paths have crossed from time to time on a couple of movies here and there, and I've always loved what you guys do over at Anarchy, and I thought this might be a great chance to kind of catch up and talk about what you do and where you came up. But so, I mean, like, first, how did you come up? What were your influences in the industry? What made you want to do this?
Well, I basically found out about post-production through finishing a movie. So, after college, my friends were making music videos. So I started making music videos with them. And then we made a feature. And that was like a couple years. And I was like, okay, I'm basically just hanging out on set, producing or line producing, smoking cigarettes, drinking Pepsis, and chewing gum. And then we got into post-production on this feature. And I was like, what's this? You're in a nice studio, air conditioned. They have snacks, but you're not killing yourself. And I was like, this is kind of interesting. And then from that point on, I kind of went with one of the producers and started working as an assistant. And then I was a runner, and it basically got going from there. And I was like, oh, I think I really like this, because production, as you guys probably know, is super hard and just very hard on you day to day.
Oh, definitely.
The hours alone. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was really like learning about this whole other world where you can still be creative, you can still bring people together, but it's not staying up all night all the time, and just dealing with that production lifestyle, which was fun. But as you get older, you kind of, sometimes some people age out of it a little bit.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, what drove you towards sound in particular? I know your primary credits I see on IMDb is sound. What brought you there? That
was basically through being in mix rooms, liking music, being able to bring teams of people together, to work in a sound environment. I just really loved it, sort of crafting and sort of being a part of finishing that soundscape for a movie, things like that. So when I did, some assisting, did some messenger stuff, did all that stuff, worked on a Foley stage, which I thought was really interesting, assisting Foley artists. And then I went to work for this place called Media City Sound, where we did reality television. And that was the first time I was really presented with a schedule and, sort of teams of people, deadlines, specs. And I really just ate it all up. I really just loved all of it. And I loved the puzzle of sort of getting things done, making a little money, making sure everyone's super happy. And it was really, and then just putting together people with certain projects that I knew would be a good fit. And so that was 20 years ago, 25 years ago. But that's, that really happened a lot on the sound side, where it took a lot of people to get it done in post.
Now, it seems like with the variety of the different projects you've had and the different aspects you've kind of done, it's been a lot of just on the job training. Like, but you say you kind of started with sound. Like, so were you musically trained, or were you one of those people who could like hear something by ear and be like, and kind of get to it?
No, my only experience with music, I was a singer in a cross-dressing Sex Pistols tribute band for a long time.
Naturally.
Yeah. And so we played in Hollywood and stuff. So everyone's like, oh, you must have a musical background. I'm like, not really. But, so that was it. And so maybe, I don't know, maybe people just sort of took my word for stuff and, thought that I had good taste.
Well, before you continue, for the love of God, I need photos of this to cut to
they're out there. I'll send you guys some. We were called the Trans Sex Pistols. It was a great time. We were pretty good. We had a really good time. And
sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
We played a lot of places that aren't around anymore. So, yeah, but I just think because now at Anarchy, we also do color, we do video work over here. And that's why we've worked with you, Jake. So it really kind of all is just about, because I don't do anything technically. I cannot sit down at a workstation. Never been able to. So for me, it's about team building, helping people sort of realize like what they need to do, finding the people that can do it, getting there without too much pain, helping out projects that are in distress, and sort of keeping everybody sane throughout the process, which is probably the most important thing I do.
So you're the Danny Ocean of the group.
I am very much so.
Not a bad person to be in it. So
I mean, there was a couple times where I was tempted to be like, oh man, it's slow. I should get in there and learn how to cue Foley, learn how to edit backgrounds, I would sit down at Pro Tools and I'd be like, man, I just can't do it. Now 25, 30 years later, it's been okay. But like I said, people always ask me and I was like, no, I don't touch anything in that regard technically.
Well, that's really something. I mean, like, I know I can say that on the handful of productions I've been on where we've had some kind of session together of something, I know you've probably been the coolest head in the room in a lot of in situations, I'm sure, where I've seen ends of this production where I'm like, oh, this is going to be interesting.
Yeah, it's really just about information and sort of helping filmmakers know what to expect. And then you sort of, once they trust you, you can be like, this is too much. This isn't going to happen for this, or you have to watch out for this, and this is how it's going to go. Because it's a lot of, most of the films we work on here, it's like first time filmmaker, maybe their second project, and it's great. But, sometimes you just kind of have to, teach everybody what the process is.
Yeah, that's actually quite a bit of my clientele too, is first
time
time filmmakers.
World, yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. I definitely want to dive further into this, but I want to take it back. How did your first professional gig, however you want to classify that, how did that come up? How did it go? And what were some preconceived notions you may or may not have had that were either dispelled or confirmed even?
Yeah, like coming out of the music video world where it's just all hustle, and just doing everything. I worked with two buddies of mine. We were a very small crew. So we would just all do everything. I went to work at Media City Sound, and I remember like this one producer, I don't know, they did a show, like a reality show. It's called like Modern Marvels or something. It was great. We did like 300 episodes, but I was there for like a week, and I was like, okay, they're like, you can start talking to clients and blah, 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 blah. And then this one guy, the client called and they were like, we have these 2 episodes. We have to get them done in like 6 days. And I was like, we can't do it. That's impossible. Like, that's crazy. Yeah. Like back then it took so long to do stuff. And so I hung up with the guy, and then 2 seconds later, my boss called me on the phone. He's like, you can't say that. And I'm like, what are you talking about? We can't do it. He's like, I know, but you can't say it like that. I'm like, okay.
You have to let it down gently.
He was like, you have to set up a meeting and blah, 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 blah. And so I was like, okay, that was like my first step in like, while we still didn't do what he requested, we did it. It just took a little longer, and I was right, but I wasn't right during that conversation.
I've had that same scenario where I've had that sit down and somebody says, no, you tell them, I'll see what I can do.
Right. Exactly.
And then you break it to them later.
Yeah. And so that was something I'll never forget.
Now, speaking of working for other houses, I don't often refer to the bio in this sense, but you've mentioned something in your bio that you sent us, that you worked at a company that went bankrupt in, quote, dramatic fashion.
Oh, it was great. It was like the money was gone. The shows were in process. It was in a receivership. It was such a mess. It was just such a huge mess. And I didn't really see it coming. Obviously, you never do till it was too late. And we were in this building in Burbank. And all of a sudden, everything was like getting locked up. And we're like, oh, man, what? And so it was just completely mismanaged above me. And I just didn't really get a sense of it. Now, I probably would have seen it coming. So but what came out of that is when I met my partner at Anarchy. I met Eric because he was doing re-recording mixing on these shows. And so I sort of looked at him and I was like, these clients are just going to get completely hosed here. Like, this is bad. Because basically this company was going to shut down. The hard drives were going to go into a vault somewhere and it was going to be in the courts. It was going to be, that's it. And, there wasn't offsite backups and all that stuff. And so we basically had to make a decision, and we decided, like, we're going to help, these are our clients. These are the people that we talk to. These are a lot of our friends. And so we took it upon ourselves to basically make it so we could finish the movies, him and I, and we basically finished them all over town while we were building out the studio that I'm sitting in now. And that was 17 years ago.
That's what I was really curious if it led directly into Anarchy.
It directly led to it. And we found a building. And also while we were doing that, my friend Tripp, who owns Monkeyland Audio, helped us out a ton, like with mixed stage time, things like that. So we could finish these movies that we had from before. So I'm like forever grateful. And so then while we were doing that, we were sort of building this place up in the process, and it took about 2 years. And then we finally like got our feet under us, and we kept all those clients, which was great because it would have been just a disaster for everybody. But yeah, it was pretty, you learn a lot of stuff when a company just sort of disintegrates around you. You learn like certain legal terms and like what you can do. And it was pretty hardcore.
Yeah, I'm sure this has been said before. So
yeah.
Anarchy was built out of anarchy.
100%. And it helped that kind of like, because I always wanted the name, and like, Eric was like, maybe, and other people were like, I don't know. And then this happened, and everyone's like, okay, I can't think of a better name. It's like, great. So here we go.
Yeah. You've built up a really impressive list of credits with Anarchy. And hearing about how Anarchy came up just now, I mean, what goes into building that first studio? I mean, like, not necessarily in the brick and mortar of it, but like, what were those first gigs like? And you've lasted for so long. How have you survived the recent disruptions, say COVID, strikes, all these things that could really devastate the industry in general?
Well, my partner Eric is a genius in regards to workflow, facilities, technical things. So basically he and our friend Sam, who's another tech, built the studio out. And so we have like a recording room, an ADR stage, and we're racing, and how it is if you're building a place, or if you've ever been involved with building something, nothing finishes a room like saying, okay, I booked a session. And so that's what I did. I'm like, hey, we're going to do a session here in 3 days. And they're like, no way. Like, like what I alluded to before. I was like, you can't say that. We're just going to do it.
Did you then tell them, you can't tell me that like that?
Exactly. They're like, we're all the same. So like we close up the ADR room, where the actors are going to come in and record their lines. And our construction crew was working on the other end of the facility, and they had a radio on, and we're sitting on the ADR stage. And I remember Eric going, I hear the radio. And I'm like, that's not good, because this is supposed to be a total quiet room.
Ideally.
So, okay. And so then that leads to like a day of, drywalling air conditioning ducts around them and building more soffits and blah, 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 blah. And so it's sort of like, this facility, and I'm sure all the other indie facilities are the same way. It's like building a ship while you're on the ocean. It's just like you're going, and then, then we're going to do this, and we'll bring this other room online, and this isn't working, and blah, blah, blah. And so I remember, the first time we actually did an ADR session, my friend was the director, and he was like, this sounds crazy. And I'm like, oh, wait. And then someone hits a button and then they're like, oh, this is good. And then we're off and running. Because as you guys know, it's always just one button.
Oh, yeah. Like you said, I think it's one thing to work for a company, but like when you're starting your own company, now you have to run all these things that you may not have expected to run or be in charge of, or there's legal. What was that like? What sort of surprises came up about that?
It's another thing where you just kind of learn as you go. Like, I am not a business person, so it's just like, oh, okay. Like, here's some more. I'm like, what is this? Oh, this is taxes from the city, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, we knew there was going to be that. And then you sort of go down the line, like, what is this? Oh, blah, blah. So it's all these expenses that always pop up. And then you get to the end of the first year and then everybody sort of informs you like, oh yeah, the town kind of shuts down from mid-December to like end of January. Oh, right. Yeah. People go to Sundance, people go on holiday, stuff like that.
Wait, only January?
Yeah, exactly. So then you have to learn how to manage cash flow throughout the year. And it's just like, oh, right. Because, you find yourself like the second week of January and there's just nobody around. Nobody's working. So, that was a hard lesson to learn. Yeah. And it's just about, when to bring on employees, stuff like that. It's just all, there's a lot that goes into it. And if you have a building, I always tell people that like everything will happen over a certain amount of years. You'll have a fire, which we did. Someone will try to steal something, which they will. You'll have a crazy person show up. That's totally happened. You'll have like rodents. Yeah, once in a while. You'll have a pandemic, you'll have a strike. So all these things, it's just like boom, 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 boom. It all kind of adds up after a while, but then you just kind of roll with it, because there's really nothing else you can do. You just have to plan ahead. COVID was tough. I couldn't really plan ahead for that one.
Oh my God. Yeah. and unsurprising to you, I'm sure surprising to me, actually, you are not the first person to tell us they've had a fire in their studio too. Oh man.
Surprisingly common.
Yeah. You're not wrong there, apparently. So you talk about guiding filmmakers through the process, and especially new filmmakers at that. What makes for the smoothest post-production process? What do you look for in a producer or filmmaker that's a sign this is going to be a smooth process versus a more challenging one? Yeah,
it's hard because when everyone decides that they're going to make a movie, it's the most exciting thing in the world. Like, for real. And I agree. I still believe that. And so you have this group of people, they're like, we're making a movie. And maybe they didn't get all the funding, right? But they're close enough. This happens a lot. Or they're making a movie with tax credits, that factor in, but they don't know how to get the tax credit back in a timely fashion. So they've made this movie, they've edited it, they're in post, they don't have any money. So it's really, and then obviously every single production in the world dips into their post-production budget to pay for production. Of course. It just happens. And that's it. So there's two types. There's the client that knows what post costs. And then there's obviously the ones that don't. And so for the ones that know, it's a little easier because you can be like, okay, they come in, you give them a bid and they're like, okay, I can't do all this stuff, but we'll make some concessions, or we'll do part of the work. And then when the movie sells, we'll come back and we'll finish some stuff up. And then I've had, it's hard because like there's a little bit of guessing game that goes on when you talk to somebody for the first time, and someone will say, oh, I'm going to send over a movie, I want you to see it, and then I'll watch it, and they'll be like, well, what do you think the budget is? And I tell them like, oh, we could do post for this, and they go, well, that's what we shot the whole movie for. And I'm like, yeah, like I had a feeling.
Yeah. It's the other half of it. Yeah.
And it's like, but sometimes, as you guys have probably seen, budget, like if if really good people are making a movie, the budget doesn't matter. Yeah. Like I've seen stuff where I was like, they shot this for $75,000 and it's amazing. And they're like, how much to post it? And I was like, 45. And they're like, that's insane. I'm like, sorry, but you sort of painted yourself into a corner because you made this rad movie, So that's the thing. It's really like, there's no, nobody really knows what the budgets are until it's put in front of them. And then it's just whether they can afford it or how they react to it or, whatever deals they can make.
What's up, everyone? I'm just dropping in to say thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. And if you're enjoying the show, be sure to let us know. If you're on YouTube, that means hitting like and subscribe. And if there's somebody you think we have to have on the show, or maybe there's a movie you want us to pull the curtain back on, let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear about it. And if you're listening on the other platforms, please be sure to give us a rate and review. It really helps. Now, back to the show.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious, especially when it comes to the post process. So like when you see a finished film and there's one character where you can tell every line of that character has clearly just been redubbed. What might be a reason for that? Like, does it mean that every single line of dialogue recorded on set was unusable?
We've done a few of these. Mostly it's accent.
Okay.
Yeah. We've had movies where the actor or actress made a choice and everybody went with it. And then after the movie, and then in editorial, everyone decided we're not going with this.
Okay.
So most of the time they'll bring the same person in. Sometimes they'll bring in a completely new person, which we've done a few times. That's wild.
Oh,
that is wild stuff where they're like, this person's going to do 200 lines of this main character, but in a different accent. And I was like, okay. And it's like, wow, like it worked, like it's done. And you have to, there's legal stuff for doing that. You have to run it by SAG and all these things like that. But it has happened. Yeah. But also like in the last, I would say even like, last 5 or 6 years, ADR has gotten so much better. Like the tools that our sound people have, it's insane. You rarely see a movie where you're like, whoa, what's going on?
Well, I'm just curious. Let's pull back the curtain on this a little bit. When you say the tools have gotten better, I'm curious because all I think of is the microphone, maybe the video in front of somebody with the beep, beep, beep.
It's more like the noise reduction on the production. It's really about making the stuff that we can make work now compared to 15 years ago. It's insane.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So basically almost everything in production can be saved. Wow. Now with noise reduction and filters and things like that. So now a lot of ADR sessions that we do are mainly just for line changes, additional stuff, things like that. Like when we first started, we would do those Sci-Fi Channel monster movies that would play every Saturday. Yeah. And they would shoot them in Bulgaria. They were great. We loved them, but they were so hard to do because they're like, here's a movie. And there's like 8 monsters in it. Here, design all these. But also you'd have guys on sets, they're on like a pirate ship or something like that. So I remember when we would have lead actors come in, sometimes they would have like 200 lines. Yeah. And they would just hang out for 2 days and they would just redo their whole movie. It doesn't happen that much anymore, so
through like things like through tools and filters and things like that. Is that like, as tools are progressing, are they becoming more AI driven, do you think, in that sense? Or like, I mean, in terms of like the deciphering of what sound versus background audio and
a little bit. I mean, that's always been in there.
I don't mean it like the voice, like, I typed words and the voice said it for me. I don't mean that, but
that is happening. Yeah, not here, but I'm telling you, it does happen. Yeah, it's going to happen more, and we'll all just have to deal with it. But it's definitely out there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but no, the processing of it, the processing of existing dialogue has gotten so good that you really can save almost anything.
To that point, everybody's favorite phrase, "Fix it in post." What has been your wildest "fix it in post" scenario in that sense?
We've done movies that they have whole scenes that just didn't record, or they had, so we've looped whole scenes. Sometimes we'll get movies where they'll edit with proxies, edit the picture.
Oh, yeah.
And then when you go back to the raw camera files, all the metadata is blown away. So you have to do a complete overmatch, you got to
do a in point, out point, in point, out point for the whole movie. Oh, my.
It's a couple times. You really got to do bad stuff to end up in that situation, but it happens.
My big fix it in post is someone left a coffee cup in frame. Well, that's not the biggest, but common one.
You have to clarify because now everyone thinks you worked on Game of Thrones and failed.
Right, exactly.
Say, hey, HBO, I'll fix it for you.
But this happens. Like I've done movies where we'll do like the main title, or whatever. And we sort of watch the credits and, you watch a movie 50 times when you're working on it, just blatant misspellings like that people watch over and over and over again. And then finally someone who's never seen it before, they're like, I don't think that's right. And then everybody goes, oh,
It's that panic
miss
that
it.
sets in right there. I got hired one particular time to do the closing credits scroll for a movie. One name changes, the whole thing changes. So-
We used to do
that's
them.
true.
We used to do them in After Effects, and we stopped. And I basically said, "Look, ncrawl.com is a wonderful product. We use them all the time, and it allows you to make changes. You can have the producers make changes. It's just they've done it. They've solved the problem. This sounds like a paid ad, and it should be if they want to give me money.
No, this, you know what? Yeah, if they want to give you money or us for hosting it, but this is why we do the show. This is the kind of stuff I like to know because this is new to me. Thank you.
Ncrawl. Yeah, that's what they're called. Ncrawl. And basically you send them, I put a little budget in them for every one of our movies. You send them an Excel sheet, they set it up for you. It's just so easy because the back and forth of doing it in another program, like people say, oh, this is final. Every movie
it's never final.
Minimum of 10 changes.
Oh yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. And it's usually weeks of back and forth. Yeah.
And it's usually a couple days before release too.
That is correct.
As someone who writes, it's never, this is my final draft. It's always, this is my final draft, third revision.
Exactly.
Always.
So
Always.
everybody put Ncrawl in your budget because it's great and it's just makes things so much easier.
Well, that's a good tip for the first time filmmaker too.
There you go.
Now, there's something else I also want to ask. Sound folks this, especially if they've worked with something like Foley.
Yeah.
What is your favorite sound that you've ever kind of been a part of recording?
When I was an assistant, there was a Foley walker named Ed Stidel, and we did a movie called Breakdown. I think it was Kurt Russell driving a semi.
Oh, okay.
I watched that movie just a few weeks ago. Yeah,
I love that movie.
It's awesome.
When the truck goes off the bridge.
Yeah.
What did we have? We had a steel plate on the floor inside of Foley stage. And then he somehow had a metal trash can that he sort of opened the bottom of like a can opener, like a can of tuna. So he had this jagged metal surface.
Yeah.
And then he put on these big gloves and he would just take the trash can and hit the metal with it and sparks would fly. And he would just go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I remember sitting there. I'm like, this is absolutely insane. But it worked, and that was for the sound, I think of the truck as it goes over and then falls off or something or it crashes or whatever. But that one I was like, okay.
Metal on metal.
Exactly.
Yeah, rending metal, total chaos.
Definitely metal on metal. So that one was pretty cool.
Imagine the visual of that, of him just wailing on this, sparks flying and all of that. That sounds really cool.
It was, but then it was a little bit later, we're doing footsteps for Selena. And he's like, put some shoes on. I'm like, what? And he's like, walk right behind me. I'm like, oh my gosh. So we're in there with high heels going, clop, 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 clop,
Well, from your band, that shouldn't have been a problem. So.
Exactly. I was like, wait a minute, there's something here.
Well, I want to go back again to your early influences because you mentioned Bones Brigade, the Search for Animal Chin.
Yeah.
And I checked it out and it's really interesting. I love that era of the skate videos. But this one was different as it had a narrative. Tell me, why does that one in particular stick with you? And what do you think that influenced in you? I see the skateboard in the back, so.
Yeah, when I grew up, I was a skateboarder and those Bones movies, they were great because they were super fun. And it wasn't, there was the skating was amazing too, but they tried to weave a goofy story into it and stuff. But then back in, I forget what it was, 2012 maybe, we got to work on the Bones Brigade documentary that went to Sundance. So Stacy Peralta sent us a deck the day before he showed up for the mix, and I got it in the mail and I opened it up and I almost passed out. It's signed by all the guys.
Wow.
And that movie is still probably my favorite thing that I've ever worked on. And so that was just a continuation of those early movies. And just to be able to work on something like that after watching all those movies growing up was pretty special.
But watching it early on, that was something that drove you towards the film.
Yeah, because we
industry.
really wanted to make stuff like that, So that's why we ended up, me and my friends, we gravitated towards punk and hardcore to make music videos.
Mm-hmm.
So we would do Pennywise videos and stuff, and there's skateboarding in that, and so it was just that whole scene, that '90s, mid '90s scene at that point, and it was good, and I like to think that sort of propelled me just into the music side and the sound side of things and just trying to be involved with as many different projects as possible. When we were making music videos, Darren, the director I worked with, we would spend all our money on film, basically half the budget because we'd shoot on 35. We were just like, we're shooting on 35. We don't care. We go down to Burns and Sawyer and rent the camera. And then we'd like go to POP in the middle of the night and do a telescene and color.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, we didn't make any money. It's like, well, it's all up there on the screen, so to speak.
Oh yeah. My film school finals were, we shot on 35 and my budget was about $5,000. And guess what? I got 5 cans of film, 1,000-foot rolls of film. That's exactly straight to there.
we would get short ends from a guy in Laurel Canyon who it was kind of like a drug deal.
That's always the fun way to say it, from a guy in fill in the blank.
Yeah, he would always be in a robe and he would take it out. This is true. He would take you out to his garage shed or whatever, and he would have all these short end reels, and we'd be like, 200 feet or whatever, blah blah blah, and that's where we would get most of our film for the shoots. And the stuff that we would do.
This one has blood on it.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, it's like, what was this from? Oh, cool, blah blah. So it was quite funny. But so then we'd spend it all on that and developing and
Now, after music videos, you've said before that you learned a lot about post-production from working on the film God Money.
Yeah.
So like, how did that film come up? What was it about that movie that kind of led you down the post path?
That was the first time. So that was my buddy Darren's movie. He directed it. And like the movie is one thing, but the soundtrack of it is just a completely other thing. It's amazing. Like we had so many great bands. But that was the first thing where I was like allowed to just kind of tag along and go into studios and sort of be like, oh, okay, like we're doing a mix, we're doing a sound edit and things like that. And I was like, I didn't know what any of that stuff was. And so from there, the line producer on that movie also worked at a post place. And so then I became his assistant, and that's how I sort of got into it. But I had never been in a mix room, and I really took to it. And I was like, okay, yeah, you can do a lot of cool stuff in here.
That's a nice perk to being producer on it too. Is you just follow the film everywhere it goes, right? Yeah.
Yeah, in the process. But at least you're like someone's giving you snacks.
Yeah, there you go. Well, on that note, very important question for Anarchy. What does your kitchen look like?
So our thing is we have popcorn. We have a popcorn machine, which people love. Mm-hmm. We also have like lots of candy, and then just drinks and drinks and drinks. Yeah, you got to keep it stocked. Oh, because when people need they need to be able to stand up, leave the room that they're in, go somewhere, because nobody smokes cigarettes anymore. So they need to go and have like a piece of candy. Yeah. And then they go back and they can finish their day.
Yeah. You got the energy drinks all stocked up too?
We got some of those too. Exactly. And then the beers are in there too, just in case. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
In case the day goes rough.
Yeah.
Yeah. I said it originally as a joke, but as I was saying it, I'm like, no, this is really important actually in a post house, like with these long sessions you have and everything too.
Yeah. That's you got to, keep people hydrated.
That little reprieve from a 8-hour session or something, and you just everybody's locked to a couch or something for so long. It's surprisingly exhausting.
Well, what's wild is like there's no breaks anymore. Like when I started, you guys are younger than me. You guys don't get breaks. When we used to mix stuff, you would wait to like change reels, it would take 15 minutes, or we would or when I worked at that Media City Sound place on Ventura, we would all go outside and smoke cigarettes like once an hour. And it was like such a drain on the economy of the company. Looking back, I just crack up. I was like, what? So everybody just stopped and went outside for 10 minutes of every hour? And I was like, yeah, I guess that was kind of how it went, because everything was so slow. Or when you do an ADR session, we used to do it on tape. So you would just wait for everything to lock up. And it's like now everything is so fast. Everything is instant. So people need breaks, man. You got to take breaks.
So what's the future look like over at Anarchy? It's been a rough couple of years for people lately with productions in general. What sort of things do you have going on?
We were really opposed to a lot of the remote workflow stuff that came up during COVID, just because it was a freaking bummer, to be honest. Like part of the, the fun and the creativity of post is like being together with people in rooms. I get like, for ADR, for recording actors, that's a totally different situation, because like actors are where they are, producers are where they are. And that, just turned into like, it's expected now that everyone's on Zoom. It was kind of this technical thing that came up where all of a sudden every ADR studio was just under the assumption that you have this massive, Zoom playback system. So of course my partner Eric built that, and we have that. But we never got into like remote mixing. We never got into remote color. We just didn't want to. We didn't think it worked well. We still do stuff with like Frame.io, put stuff up for approvals. People take notes and stuff, but the real time, it's just not the same, you know? Basically now going forward, we're doing a lot of docs. We're doing a little bit of TV. The indie features, a lot of people are shooting right now. It's almost May. So normally in a normal year, I think a lot of these people would have got into production in February. So it's been sort of slow in that regard, but hopefully that picks back up. We worked on a lot of weird stuff during COVID. we
weird can be fun.
Oh my gosh. We had a lot of movies that just kept being edited or re-edited or whatever. So, you know, it was trying, but yeah, the strike was hard too. So hopefully, you know, by the time we get into the summertime here, everything's just sort of cranking again. But yeah, it's been a little bit of a struggle.
Oh yeah. I believe it. And you guys have a facility. I mean, that's a big thing in and of itself too.
Yeah. I mean, just having a place. I mean, man, but now I'm thinking back, like during COVID, it was so sad, you know, like when nobody was coming in and we would maybe have one person in working, and it was, you guys remember LA was just like, it was a bummer.
Yeah. Ghost town.
It was, right? I mean, it was nice. Yeah. I feel like we're going to stay focused on like the indie world. We don't do any sort of network television or anything like that. Yeah. So it's more like docs, you know, we just did some music videos for like Sum 41 and Alkaline Trio. So that was really fun. So doing color for those. Yeah. So it's just, you know, and then just looking at where other stuff is going to come from that we don't even know about, you know, because it seems like the whole industry is changing. You know, my son, he's a freshman and he doesn't watch TV that much, you know, and his friends, they watch stuff on YouTube and all that stuff. It's a changing landscape for sure.
So I'm curious with the workload that it seems like you have, what do you do to unwind at the end of the day? Like what's the relaxing thing? Do you still skateboard or
I skateboard a little bit. I bailed pretty bad like a year ago, so I've been like taking it easy. But I do play roller hockey in Burbank. So there's a wonderful outdoor rink at Hollywood Way in Victory. If anyone's interested in roller hockey, come by, check it out.
Okay, is that the rink next to the playground over on Victory? I used to take my kids there all the time.
It's great. It's a great playground.
Oh yeah.
It's a wonderful rink. Yeah. It's a fun place. I've been skating there for like 20 years. So I skated there before I moved to Burbank. So oddly enough.
Nice.
Yeah.
Dan, thank you so much for being here. This has been an awesome conversation. Where can the people find you and Anarchy?
Anarchypost.net. And I think we're on Insta at Anarchy Post. Check us out. And yeah, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
It was a blast. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
Logan, that was a blast.
Yeah. It was a ton of fun hearing from Dan. Like he does bring this kind of unique thing, because that is one of the things with film that you can do in the industry is like, as he said, he's like, I put teams together. It's that like, I don't play the instruments, I play the orchestra. Right. It's that kind of vibe.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I loved how he came to that, because he's like, oh wait, I can just be in a studio and I don't have to be out in the field and wait, I don't have to touch. Oh, okay, cool. I can put this together. I love that attitude.
Yeah.
But I always love working with him. When he shows up on my email thread with the producers and the post people in general, I'm always excited because, like I said, he is one of the coolest heads in the room. You know, there could be producers freaking out about deadlines, freaking out about budget, but he's always kind of said, hey, everything's going to be okay. You're in good hands. Yeah, we got this. And he's been that guy in the room. Don't panic. That's right. But hey, Logan.
Yeah.
Where can the people find you, Logan?
I'm findable. You can find me on Twitter at FilmGuy89, Instagram, Threads, and Letterboxd at FilmGuy1989. Or on YouTube, doing various table readings for different scripts. How about you, Jake? Where can they find you?
Oh, you can find me at VFX2Go on all the socials, and my website, vfx2go.com.
And Jake?
Yes, sir.
Did you know that we have a website?
Oh, shit, we have a website?
HollywoodUnveiled.com.
Yes, we do. And on the socials, we are Hollywood Unveiled Podcast, just to make sure everybody knows, you can find us there. You can find our old episodes. And one of these days we'll post to Threads, and one of these days we'll figure out how to end the show. But until then, Logan,
leave money for post.
Leave money for post.
Leave money for post.
Don't forget to leave money for post.